Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
We can meet our destiny to build a land here that will be for all mankind a shining city on a hill.
You're listening to the Liberty Brothers Radio Show, only on Revolution Radio. Now, here are your hosts, Jim White and Jason Van Tatenhove.
The crusade for freedom is your chance and mine to fight communism.
Please hang up and try again.
Dave Hodges.
Hey, Dave. Hey. It's Jim and Jason with the Liberty Brothers. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Gotta warn you ahead of time, guys, I'm in a public place, so we might hear some background noise that hopefully will not be Jade Helm trying to extract me.
Well, at least we'll be able to get word out if they do come for you.
Okay. You make sure you call the cavalry for me.
We will. Well, we had Stuart Rhodes of the Oath Keepers on earlier, so yeah,
awesome.
We'll make sure that we get a team out for you.
Okay, sounds good.
So, boy, things are heating up with Jade Helm a little bit, it would seem. We actually had a pretty good discussion with Stuart on it, and he brought up a lot of good points. He was saying that, it was only just a year ago that we almost had a shooting war here in America with the kickoff of Bundy Ranch, and that they're definitely looking at how to approach that differently now. And yeah, can you give us an update? What's new in the last couple of weeks that's been happening with the Jade Helm exercise?
Well, I'm starting to fill in the gaps around Jade Helm. I mean, I'll tell you what I have learned. One of my military contacts, retired military contacts, actually used to do special forces. And as such, he knows the guys who are at the upper echelon of Jade Helm from the Special Forces point of view. And what he tells me is they don't know what's going to happen next. They're given mission details to carry out in a certain time frame, but they know nothing about what's going to follow. So they might know, for example, what they're going to do up until next Tuesday, but Wednesday is a mystery, and they still don't have a full comprehension of what in the world this is really all about. I think that's one critical issue. The other critical issue is this. We have an opportunity here, and I don't know how much to the choir I'm preaching today with your audience, but we have an opportunity to wake up people, because people who know nothing about the New World Order are scared to death of Jade Helm. And what's really interesting about this is, I'll just give you a website statistic. In the last 30 days, starting back yesterday, going back 30 days, I've had 536,000 new people to my website. I've had 1.5 million since January. And what that means, that's not total visitors. I'm talking, these are people that have never been on the Common Sense Show before. With that, and where they're going are the Jade Helm articles. And we've been setting website records over the last 2 months, and it's because people are scared. Average, everyday people who sit on the couch, drink their beer with a remote control, are starting to hear about Jade Helm here and there, and they want to know why the mainstream media is not covering it. They want to know why they're not getting better answers. And the biggest thing that I see these novel people to our part of the world are asking is, why in the world does the government feel it's necessary to practice extracting individuals who disagree with the government and also enforcing martial law? And this is what the average person who knows nothing about the NWO is asking. We have a real opportunity to really introduce people to the tyranny that's going on in this country.
Well, Dave, we certainly have seen on our website our top search term as of late has been Jade Helm 15 update. So we're certainly seeing that, and I don't know if it's because of the Sugar Pine mine, but we've certainly had a lot new exposure as well to our webpage and our videos and whatnot. So it does seem like people are out there really searching for new information. Now, one of the things that has kind of transpired in the last couple of weeks is the Walmart closings. And I've heard it tied into these underground tunnel systems, that they're very close to that. I don't know about that. I do know that Walmart would not just close down 6 of their major metropolitan stores without that revenue stream being replaced somehow, or being multiplied. That's just not the way they do business. So there's got to be something going on there. And we've seen that they've blacked out the windows. They've got a heavy police presence on every door on some of these. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your thoughts are on the Walmart closings?
Yeah, I'm working on a story. In fact, I'm supposed to be talking to some Midland/Odessa people today. When we're done with this interview, I'm supposed to make a call down to Midland, Texas, where the largest per capita Walmart has been closed. And what I'm getting in my preliminary discussions with people from Midland, that includes a talk show host, a couple of bankers, and some oil guys, what they're telling me, and what I'm hearing also through sources I know that know them as well, is that they have put in huge reinforced steel doors in the cargo delivery area of the Midland Walmart. They have replaced the shelves with huge shelves, and they're sturdy, and you could sleep up to 2 people on each one of these shelves. And it looks like they're beginning to prepare to accept people. Now, also next door to the Midland Walmart is an AT&T center that now has a huge chain link fence around the perimeter, and there's no one coming or going. And when these workers go into work, they are strip searched basically, and then they're searched again when they leave. They're not allowed to bring in cell phones, so you're not going to get photos and stuff. But some of these people are speaking, they're talking, and there is a pervasive fear that's moving through the Midland area from what is described to me. Now, what's interesting about this Midland situation is I was involved in some financial dealings back in the early to mid 90s, and I happened to make a very good friend at that time. He lived in both Midland and then later in Odessa. And this guy is fairly prominent today. He's well known. And at one time, we were very close. Well, out of the blue, he calls me, not once this week, but twice. And we used to talk about how the unfolding of the takedown of America would take place a couple of decades ago. And he said it's happening right according to plan. He started telling me that he's got sources in the reserves as well as the National Guard that are telling him that these people are being told that, number one, do not ask questions about your mission, and that goes hand in hand with the leaders of Jade Helm saying to my contact, they don't know what they're going to be doing next, but even more disturbingly, that these people are expected to fire on selected targets when ordered to do so, and those orders were issued when they were out in a target practice range. They called them all together, and they gave them this, basically what sounds like a pep talk, saying you will fire on the targets that are selected. That tells me it's American targets. Why else would you have to give that order? Nothing else makes any sense to me. So my friend from over 20 years ago is confirming a lot of the rumors. Now, I'll tell you something else he told me. And he's got this from one of his sources that worked on the project. Underneath, Walmart lies on or near railroad tracks. I'm sure you guys know that. and that's by design. And the Walmarts by the railroad tracks, there are also an underground tunnel system that runs parallel to these railroad tracks. I don't know how much you're aware of that. You've seen some of the work that's been done on the investigation of this. Annie and I on the Common Sense Show have investigated this. And a lot of these railroad tracks have tunnels, corresponding tunnels underneath of them. And these tunnels all have side entries where they depart from the railroad tracks and go directly to Walmart. So personally, my belief is that from what I'm uncovering in the evidence, that the Walmarts are going to be processing centers for dissidents or final disposition centers for dissidents. I don't know which one it'll be, but I will tell you this, it's not good. And I plan on having a lot more information on this by the end of the day.
Now, have you heard the theory about being able to use them? There was a YouTube video I saw. I can send you the link to it. Apparently, this is a guy who had done some military training, and part of this training was using Walmarts with Department of Homeland Security as a distribution base, that if they needed to move weapons and whatnot around throughout the homeland, they would be able to use ammunition and whatnot. These Walmart centers, which already had the distribution aspect of it kind of dialed in, to use it that way. I thought that was an interesting theory that made a little sense to me. But
yeah, I actually ran that video as a companion piece to an article I wrote, and I do think it's very, very logical. The problem with this is what's going on inside the Midland Walmart doesn't match that scenario.
Right.
And I'm not saying that the other Walmarts were not seeing that. I found that video to be highly credible. The man was believable. He sounded like he knew what he was talking about. Everything was logical. But it looks to me like they're getting ready to house humans and not product at Midland. Now, I don't know about the other ones, so maybe it's multi-use. I will tell you what I have learned, that in Canada, and you may have already heard this, they have shut down 133 targets. And this parallels Walmart.
No.
I'm thinking, oh, you didn't know about this?
No, I didn't hear about that.
No, I didn't hear about it.
Target stores, you mean? The Target retail stores?
Yes. 133 targets are being closed down in Canada, throughout Canada. And I was first alerted to this by a woman whose son is in the Canadian military, and he was part of the shutdown process. And he thought it was bizarre. He had actually gone to 3 different targets and did his deal as far as shutting the Target down. And these people were fired from Target in much the same way that the Walmart workers were.
Dave, hold on. Also, we have a 30-minute break at the bottom of the hour now, so just bear with us. We'll be right back, folks, with the Liberty Brothers Radio Show with Dave Hodges of the Common Sense Show.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
And welcome back to Liberty Brothers Radio Show. We're back in the home stretch. We're here with Dave Hodges of the Common Sense Show. Before we left, we were talking about targets being closed down. I want to say, 140 of them, Dave? And the Canadian military was involved.
The exact number is 133 targets.
Wow.
And that's in Canada.
You gotta wonder what's going on there. They're not just, doing it to save money.
Well, my guess is those are going to be FEMA housing facilities, and the reason I say that is because of the sheer volume. The Canadians do not have a developed system like we do with 800 constructed FEMA camps. Also, we've got a number of sports arenas and stadiums, as well as shopping malls owned by Simon Properties, who all signed an agreement with DHS in 2012 to allow their facilities to be used in, quote, times of emergency. So the Canadians don't draw upon those vast resources we have south of the border. So I would say their targets are probably going to be their FEMA camp housing facilities.
Well, now it says right here in the story, Dave, that they were losing money in Canada, and that's why they're closing them down. Are you thinking that's just a ruse?
Yeah. Don't you find the timing to be a little suspect? A box store like
Sure.
Walmart closing down in high volume at this particular point in time.
Well, of course, they're saying labor. They're saying it was labor. Of course, there's always
that's
spin.
what they said in Walmart, too. That makes no sense. They said it was a labor dispute that shut down the Walmarts because they were being sued because of a labor dispute.
Let me tell you about the Midland deal. That's the one they closed allegedly for the plumbing. And what I found out last night in conversations I had with some of these people is the plumbing was actually repaired the last time 6 months ago in that Walmart. So that's totally bogus. So you guys, there's always going to be a cover story. They're not going to come out and say, well, we're closing down the Targets and someday you'll be living in them because we don't like your political views. They're not going to tell us that. But for me to believe that the closing of these Targets is independent and coincidental with what's going on in America is silly. But there's also something else that ties this together. In 2006, the Canadian government signed an agreement with the American government to send their troops south of the border to assist us in any kind of emergency or civil unrest.
Right, I remember
Additionally, there are joint activities right now, maneuvers going on between various National Guard units from various states and the Canadian military where they are crossing back and forth over the border. And it's all along the northern border from about Minnesota to the West Coast. This is ongoing as we speak. I've had a number of Canadians write to me and give me the same information firsthand. They either have relatives who are participating in it or they have witnessed it. I've had people send me a video of a train that was about 2 miles long stacked with nothing but American military equipment in Canada.
Well, Dave, I was over at a friend's house doing a video, and he handed me an article and said, you should look into this. Did you hear about the Canadian Mounties, I believe, coming down to North America to the gun shows and getting names of Canadians that purchase guns, and they would stop them as they're going across the border and disarm them? Did you hear anything about that?
I have heard that story, and that makes a great deal of sense because you remember when they had the fires, and I don't remember the name of the event now, but a couple of summers ago in Canada they had a fire, and they had to evacuate this entire small town of about 10,000, 12,000 people. And why these people were evacuated, the Royal Mounties went through their homes and took their guns. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. There was an outrage. It was an outrage there for that happening. Right now, Royal Mounties have a lot of power in Canada. They really do.
Yeah, Dudley Do-Right's become part of the New World Order. There's no question about that.
Well, let me ask you this, Dave. If they're looking at using these Walmarts and Targets as FEMA holding centers, does that mean that there's going to be so many people rounded up that the the existing FEMA facilities that we know about and have covered before just aren't going to do the trick, or are they slotted for something else? Or is it just there's so many people?
Who knows? All I can do is respond to the information as it becomes available, and information that we have a reasonable chance of validating. The last time I was on your show, I gave you a brief rendition of Obama's communist background. And I want to refer just to one element of that rendition, and that was Barack Obama's affiliation with a man named Bill Ayers, the man who launched his political career. Bill Ayers, the head of the Weatherman Underground at the time, infiltrated by Larry Graffwall as an FBI special informant. Bill Ayers told Larry in a one-on-one conversation that if we ever take over, we'll have to put 50 million Americans in re-education camps, and we'll have to exterminate over half of them. This is the man who launched Obama's political career. He still visits the White House. I got to believe that this president is in bed, with this viewpoint through and through. And even if he's not, I'm coming out with an article tomorrow, and people can go to my website today and sign up for the newsletter, and they'll be automatically sent to their mailbox. Because, guys, what I'm coming out with tomorrow is the names and associations of senior White House officials who have live connections to the Muslim Brotherhood. And this is scary. We've got an Obama administration staffed with Muslim Brotherhood sympathizers, and the links are clear, and they're running a martial law drill in this country, an extraction drill. That makes me exceptionally nervous.
Wow.
Dave, can we ask you can you give out one name ahead of your story? Can you give us a nugget here? You feel free to do.
Because I'm not very good at Arabic, you're going to have to give me a minute to go to my website. You know what? Yeah, but it's going to take me a couple minutes to roll into that. So let me.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Now, these are high-level officials. You're talking about people that have the ear of the White House, so to speak, correct? I mean, these are people that have day-to-day access. Is that what you're finding out? Those type of people?
They have positions in organizations like Homeland Security.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
Okay,
Dave,
I'm looking this up right now. Hold on here, and like I said, if I was better at this. At speaking Arabic and naming these names, I would be able to tell you.
Well, you shouldn't have slacked off so much in high school, Dave. You should have learned Arabic when you had the chance. I'm just joking.
I thought I got a break when they did away with Latin the year before I was in the grade. If you'll bear with me, I'm about 10 seconds, 15 seconds away.
No problem. Take your time, my friend.
But I'll give you one right now off the top. You got Valerie Jarrett, a senior White House official who is doing business with Iran. And I'm sure you guys have read these accounts. They're stunning. They're shocking.
Yes.
They have no business. Okay, gentlemen, so let me scroll down here. I'll have their pictures up tomorrow. Okay, here we go. By the way, this is also validated by retired Air Force General Tom McInerney. And Aaron Klein and Brenda Elliott have also written about some of these things in their 2 New York Times bestsellers. And let me scroll down here, and we'll start naming names here. Now, this is an incomplete list compared to what I've got in a hard copy file at my home. Here we go. Well, let's start. This is an easy one. Let's start with the president's half-brother, Malik Obama. He's the head of Muslim Brotherhood armed procurement and also their finances. That means they're intimately tied into ISIS. So you could say, well, Dave, that's only guilt by association. Okay, let me see. Let me scroll up here. And I'm sorry I wasn't prepared for this question today.
You're fine.
Okay, Arif Allah Khan. Okay, and here's his resume. He's the former deputy mayor of Homeland Security, Public Safety for the city of Los Angeles. He was responsible for derailing the LAPD's plan to monitor activities within the Los Angeles Muslim community. He stopped that. And then you've got, he was a professor of Homeland Security and Counterterrorism in 2010, and he's now serving as a distinguished visiting professor at the National Defense University. I would say that that is pretty good. Now, he is openly a devout Sunni Muslim who's participated in a Muslim Public Affairs Council fundraiser entitled Be the Change, and this was designed to support the organization's leadership programs which advocate for a Sharia law takeover of the United States. Is that good enough for you? I mean, this is stunning, and he's serving in this president's administration in multiple positions. Let's go with another one. A former member of Al Qaeda, Omar Nassif, and he's also connected to the Muslim Brotherhood with his associate Sheikh Yusuf Qadari. And all of these people have been listed as Muslim Brotherhood trustees on the Muslim Brotherhood membership rosters, and they're publicly available. And the question I have is, why has the FBI stopped vetting these White House appointments? These people have been appointed to key positions within the Obama administration. It's absolutely amazing. Another one is Huma Abedin, who he is serving in Homeland Security as a special advisor, and he has intimate ties that I hypertext link into with the Muslim Brotherhood. And Front Page Magazine has actually covered this with regard to him. Hassan is also on the board of Oxford Center for Islamic Studies, where they advocate the Sharia law takeover of the United States. This is who serves in the White House. This is what we're up against. And these people are in charge of Jade Helm. And you know, I'll give you another thing that's interesting, and I'm going to jump on the other side of the border to the south of us. I heard an interview yesterday, and I've reported on this event as well. I can't remember the lady's first name, last name Garcia. She is an official with Judicial Watch, and she was on my friend Rory's show on the SGT report. Rory sent me the link, and I listened to the interview, and she had just pretty much what I already have in print. Documentation after documentation of an ISIS base camp 8 miles from El Paso. And people go, that's just a bunch of crap, didn't happen, blah, blah, blah. Well, then why was it when InfoWars Joe Biggs flew over this alleged camp and actually showed some suspicious structures, why the FBI garnered him and questioned him after they sequestered him? This is beyond comprehension, and it's interesting. ISIS, in the Judicial Watch documents they uncovered, and they're double-sourced documents, they link a connection between the Mexican drug cartels and ISIS. Well, that opens up a whole can of worms, guys, because I covered this last summer, and I covered it again a week ago. The drug cartels in Mexico are supplied by the Peruvian military, and they go by the name of the Sanchez Paredes cartel. They've taken over the Colombian cocaine trafficking. They're the biggest distributors of heroin, and they're up there in marijuana. And the guns and the drugs that are going to groups like the Sinaloas and the Juarez cartels that are in business with ISIS are coming from the Sanchez Paredes. And where do they get their guns from? The Muslim Brotherhood and Malik Obama, the president's half-brother. And we know the Muslim Brotherhood is intimately linked to ISIS. So sorry for the long-winded answer, guys, but these are the connections that I'm starting to make, and they're really easy to make. And I'll give you something that scares the living heck out of me, and it's this. Outside San Salvador, and I was first given this information last year by an off-the-record DEA senior official. And he was all PO'd because he got fired from his post in Peru because he tried to go after the Sanchez Paredes, and our DEA took him out of his post and stationed him in the United States. I also have been able to validate this through my research. There is a terrorist training camp outside San Salvador, and they're training these groups like the MS-13, which are the assassins for the Sinaloa cartel. They're training the Sinaloa cartel, the Juarez cartel, the Tijuana cartel, and now members of ISIS outside San Salvador in paramilitary tactics, including handheld surface-to-air Stinger missiles, 50 caliber machine guns, on and on it goes. This is what we're looking at south of our border. And I think we're sitting on a powder keg. If you ask me really what's coming, there's just too much going on at the same time. I'd have to be a coincidence theorist to believe that these issues are not linked.
Do you see like an invasion, Dave? Do you see them invading the southern border, like an ISIS invasion?
I look at ISIS carrying out fifth column activities in preparation for an invasion. Now, that's a very good question, because I have broached this subject before on my website, and I'm going to broach it again with new updated information. Vladimir Putin has totally outmaneuvered the United States in our own hemisphere. He has formed military alliances and is giving Russian military equipment, in some cases stationing ships and troops and planes in places like Nicaragua, Panama, Brazil, Peru. I mean, I could go on and on. It's 12 nations total, and I believe this is the Red Dawn invasion force, to give it, for lack of a better term. So I think the ISIS contingency with the cartels, that's going to be your fifth column. Disrupt command and control, reign of terror through the United States, basically just keep us on edge. And I think the real invasion will come down the road after martial law is imposed because of the actions of ISIS. I think that is going to happen after we're subjugated and under martial law. That's when we're going to get invaded. And I think that's the beginning of the Third World War. And also, I'll go back to something I forgot to mention about Midland. And there's confirmation on this too. Walker Todd, who used to be a member of different Federal Reserve banks, is on the record saying the economy is going to collapse this summer because of political military events. And this is what the bankers in Midland are saying to each other. This is what they believe is coming. That right now, they say the banks are hanging on by an edge. Oil prices are low. Midland and Odessa are oil companies. The banks there are intimately tied into this, and they're scared to death. And they think an economic collapse is also going to accompany what's coming, and will also be used as one of the excuses to usher in martial law.
Pretty scary stuff, Dave. Let me ask you this. I want to see if we can tie in a little bit with... we've talked about the Jade Helm being possibly China with being at the helm and whatnot. We've also seen a lot of the BLM land grabs that we've seen of late. It seems like they are taking our resources and possibly commoditizing them for the debt that we have to China. A lot of people are theorizing that that's one of the reasons why we're seeing like Sugar Pine Mine and some of these other land grabs happening. It's actually for the mineral rights that have been, in essence, already sold to China. Is there a China connection to this? And can you comment on that?
There is definitely a China connection to this. And you can go back to the Bundy Ranch. There's an illustration of what I'm speaking about. China's been given, and this is part of this takeover of the United States as well, China's been given what's been called loosely inland ports. And it's a concept that came in under the guise of free trade agreements. I believe Kansas City was the first one, and the Chinese control the inland port there. Well, in the area of the Bundy Ranch, This was designated by the BLM. I had the document. They scrubbed it after I published this. But the BLM said that this was an inland port that China controlled. Now, what they're doing, this is to pacify the Chinese because we owe them so much money. They're putting these inland ports over mineral-rich resources. We have an estimated, I forget the amount now, guys, but it's in the trillions of precious metals buried under the United States. And I wrote on this several years ago.
50 trillion, Dave.
How much is it?
50 trillion.
50
I wrote a couple articles on that.
Yeah, I wrote on that a few years ago. But the Chinese are getting these inland ports that are above these vast mineral resources, and coincidentally, they're near a Canamex corridor or a NAFTA superhighway, which is the international corridor system of trading once we're officially in the North American Union. And they're also located next to a military base. And this is something that I won't say it's a pattern, but this is what we found in Bundy. And now down here in Arizona, we've got something very similar in the Luke Flight Range, Luke Air Force Base Flight Range. We have a huge solar farm. Come to find out, guess who's the controlling interest? A Chinese company, and I don't have my notes in front of me, but this company is actually a Chinese military front company, and they own the Arizona solar farm that's along Interstate 10, and it's in the Luke flying range. It's probably about 30 miles from Luke base proper. So we're seeing a pattern here of the Chinese being positioned, and I asked myself some questions last year that I actually put into writing. Why would you put something like this near a military base? And I'm thinking, well, what if the military doesn't go along with the takeover of the United States entirely? Then you could have already had a conduit of which to bring Chinese in, soldiers, and they could be used to attack that base. That's what I concluded was the reason. But also, too, the Chinese are taking over our mineral resources. We're seeing this happen again, of course, up in Oregon, and we're going to see a lot more of this around the country. So, yes, the Chinese are part of it. The Russians are part of it. The Russians have trained in this country to do martial law. I've documented this under the FEMA bilateral agreement with the Russian Foreign Ministry. People tell me I'm nuts to say this, but I've got the smoking gun documents. The first document gave Russia permission to ship 15,000 troops into the United States for disaster training. Now, why in the world would we need to have 15,000 Russian troops? Are the National Guard, EMTs, paramedics, and the fire departments all going on vacation? No, they're here to do martial law. A few years ago, they were in Colorado Springs at Fort Carson, and they were going to local AAA baseball games in that city, directing traffic, interacting with
Dave, we're coming up to the end here. Need to go ahead and give out your website real quick.
It's thecommonsenseshow.com.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.